following training is sponsored by the Nioga Library System. We serve our member libraries in Niagara, Orleans, and Genesee counties. Please visit your local library homepage and use your library card to get access to streaming videos, downloadable music, audiobooks, ebooks, and even more from the comfort of your own home. Thank you. Hello. We are back again, and before I go into Chapter 5 of Crucial Conversations, which I've been talking about here in the past series, how to talk to people in that, there was an important piece that we went over in Chapter 4. The title of it is Learn to Look, and they talk about looking at the conversation, looking at the entire pool of shared meaning, and not only the what here, the content that is under discussion, but also the why, the nonverbal reactions, people's reactions to the discussions. And in this, I ended up taking a look at Chapter 4 again before I went over to Chapter 5. Interestingly, I ran into a BBC documentary on animals, specifically a clip about dogs, and I'm going to link it. It's only like 4 minutes. I totally encourage you to take a look at it, because what that is relates directly, the dogs and how they play, I think relates directly here. If you don't think so, please let me know in the comments, shoot me an email, whatever. But I think the dogs and how they play and how they talk relates here. And I'm going to show you what I mean right now. So, of course, I have the references here about the Crucial Conversations. You can, of course, get the book, shameless plug for your libraries. You can get the book from your local libraries here in Nioga. Check your library catalog. You can also get, I'm going to mention again from a previous video, Man's Search for Meaning, which was a book done by Viktor Frankl, he was a survivor of the concentration camps from World War II. Extremely smart, and he goes into greater detail than I can possibly get into here, but I am going to mention him, so I want to make sure to give him props and put the citation here in my description so you can find it. In Chapter 4, the authors talk about silence versus violence. This is their phrasing, and I am quoting them, silence versus violence. They use that phrasing simply because it rhymes. This is talking about talking and dialogue, certainly not physical violence. Of course, you're always to keep yourself and your loved ones safe, and to be clear here, no one is talking about actual physical violence. Don't do that, and if you're on the receiving end, get out of there. There's no excuse for it, period. So when the authors talk about safe here, it's about having a space where we are free to talk about what is happening without the fear that the other person will go silent or go violent. And that is defined by the authors as nobody in the conversation is going to get overly angry about it. They're going to hold something you say against you or you against them, that something is going to be brought up again and again after saying that you're not going to, or any other means of actively hurting the other participants in the conversation. We all agree on the same rules. We are not going to simply go silent unless we need to pull back for a moment, basically take a break, and then come back to the conversation and make it a dialogue. So everybody agrees to the ground rules beforehand, hopefully. That's the idea. And to be honest, now going away from the book, although I do agree with those rules, and I would think it's fantastic if we can get that all the time. Of course, it's not always going to happen all the time, but I ran into, over the weekend, a short little clip on Facebook about the rules of play for dogs. Hang with me here, I promise. I'm going to link it here and link it in the description. It's from BBC One, and it's a clip from the series or the documentary. They have Animals at Play. If you want to go watch it, it's great. Okay. Now, I'm quoting directly from this documentary on the BBC One about animals at play. Dogs have evolved a set of signals to basically reduce the likelihood, almost to zero, that play fighting will escalate into real aggression. I think that's exactly what we're talking about, what we've been talking about here in Crucial Conversations. I believe all of us who have dogs in our lives have seen the play bow. I know I have. The front end of the dog crouches down on the ground. It's like a down dog in yoga. So crouch down on the front, butt up in the back, and usually a bit of a tail wag to go with it. The dog looks up with expectancy, and as the documentary goes on now, the documentary says when two dogs play, they become so in tune with each other that they often synchronize their play bows. There's less than 0.003 of a second of difference between the two dogs that they show. And Mark, the researcher, believes that the play bow is underpinned by a set of rules. Here we go. That almost all canines around the world adhere to. It's not just domesticated dogs. They talk about hyenas, they talk about wolves, they talk about all canines from around the world. Mark, the researcher, says, so there are 4 basic rules of play that dogs generally understand. Number 1, ask first. When the dog is looking, then you initiate a play bow. So actually they talk about barking to get the dog's attention, and then there's a play bow, and if the bow is returned, then play starts. Rule number 2, mind your manners. Don't be too aggressive with biting or hitting if you run into other dogs. Dogs literally self-handicap or basically restrain themselves to ensure that they don't inflict injuries and they know that everyone is just playing. What happens if a dog goes too far here it breaks rule number 2? Play stops immediately. And then rule number 3, admit when you're wrong. Ooh. If a dog bites too hard, they back up. And this is the research and the video shows this happening. It's amazing. The offended dog will actually yip and back up. The offending dog backs off, play bows to ask if play can resume, and if the bow is returned, the play session goes on from there. Oh, wow. Okay. And last but not least, for the dogs, rule number 4, be honest. Mark, the researcher, says in the video, don't ask other dogs to play and then violate the rules. If the dogs don't play fair, they can be marked as a cheater, and other dogs in the group will not play with them. Wow, I thought that was really incredible. And just to remind us here, this pool of shared meaning is the what, the content under discussion, and the why, the people's reactions to the discussion. And I think the parallels, honestly, are fairly obvious. They dovetail right into everything else that we've been talking about. And just to be sure, right here, taking from the authors here in Crucial Conversations, the authors' definitions of silence and violence in dialogue, in talking. Silence is withholding meaning and dialogue from the pool of shared meaning. And violence, they define as forcing your own meaning, someone's own meaning into the pool. So this is the pool, this is where we are and where we sit. So in the what, the content, there might be a forcing of ideas or theories or meanings, and people then react, and many of us react in silence because we pull away, we simply don't want to fight, but that can cause resentment. That's what the authors talk about. So here in green, silence consists of any act to purposely withhold information from the pool of meaning. It's almost always done as a means of avoiding potential problems. People may mask, avoid, or withdraw, and you can see that on pages 58 and forward there. Violence here consists of any verbal strategy that attempts to convince, control, or compel others to a certain point of view. Methods range from name calling and monologuing to making threats. The three most common forms are controlling, labeling, and attacking. We must become vigilant self-monitors because we can only control our own reactions to a conversation. Remember, Viktor Frankl talks extensively about this in his book, In Man's Search for Meaning, and the authors here give much greater detail about dual processing back in chapter 3, and they go on in chapter 4 to have self-tests to learn more about your own style under stress. Once we're aware of our own style, we can then better cope with our own behaviors and contribute to a safe place to talk and contribute to that shared pool. And more on safety and other things in chapter 5. This is exciting. I'll see you again soon. Thank you. Bye now.